I'm Marcus Thompson, 34, and for 3 years I've been raising my twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, alone. My family never let me forget what a failure I was. My mother's disapproving sighs, my brother's jokes about Mr. Mom, my sister's constant reminders that the girls need a woman's touch. Every family gathering became a chorus of criticism about my parenting choices. My messy house, my struggles to balance work, and bedtime stories. Then came the parent-teacher conference that changed everything. Mrs. Patterson, a veteran teacher with 30 years of experience, looked me straight in the eye and said words I'll never forget. "Mr. Thompson, you're the best parent I've ever met." But what she revealed next about my daughters and what my family had been hiding from me would expose the truth about who was really failing as a parent. The validation I'd been searching for was about to come from the most unexpected source, and my family's mockery was about to turn into something else entirely. 3 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. Sarah and I had been married for 6 years. The twins were 4 years old, and I was working steady construction jobs that paid well enough to keep us comfortable. Sure, we had our problems, what? Couple dozen. I never imagined I'd come home one Tuesday evening to find half our belongings gone and a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore, Marcus. I need to find myself. The girls deserve better than a mother who feels trapped. Don't try to contact me." That was it. No explanation about where she was going, no discussion about custody, no consideration for Emma and Sophie, who kept asking where mommy went. Just gone, like our 6 years of marriage and her role as a mother meant nothing. The custody papers I filed 3 weeks later tell a different story than the one my family loves to repeat. They show a man who fought tooth and nail for his daughters, who hired a lawyer he couldn't afford, who documented every doctor's appointment, every school event, every bedtime story to prove he was the stable parent. The papers show that Sarah never contested custody, never even responded to the legal proceedings. She simply disappeared from their lives as completely as she'd disappeared from mine. But my family saw something else entirely. They saw validation of everything they'd whispered behind my back for years. "I told you that marriage wouldn't last," my mother said when I called to tell her what happened. Not "I'm sorry" or "How are the girls?" Dissatisfaction that her predictions had come true. David was more direct. "Well, what did you expect? You rushed into everything marriage, kids. Buying a house you couldn't afford? Maybe this is a wake-up call." Jennifer offered to help by taking the girls for a few weeks while I got my act together, as if losing their mother wasn't traumatic enough. She wanted to separate them from their father too. Those first few months were the hardest of my life. Emma would cry herself to sleep asking when mommy was coming home, and Sophie would crawl into my bed every night, afraid that I might disappear too. I made every mistake in the book, letting them eat cereal for dinner because I was too exhausted to cook, showing up late to preschool pickup because a job ran over, forgetting to pack their lunches and having to rush to school with peanut butter sandwiches. Every mistake was ammunition for my family's criticism. Every stumble proved their point that I wasn't cut out for this. But what they didn't see were the small victories. The way Emma's nightmares gradually stopped when I started our bedtime story tradition. How Sophie's anxiety decreased when I established consistent routines. The slow, steady progress we made as a family of 3, learning to depend on each other instead of the woman who'd abandoned us. I kept those custody papers in my desk drawer, not as a reminder of Sarah's betrayal, but as proof that I'd fought for my daughters when it mattered most. When everyone else was ready to give up on us, I was prepared to move mountains to keep us together. My family never asked to see those papers. They never asked what the legal proceedings revealed about Sarah's state of mind, or her willingness to fight for her children. They preferred their narrative, that I was a failure who'd driven away a good woman, and was now in over my head. The truth was far more complicated, but nobody seemed interested in hearing it. The family photo from last Christmas sits on my mother's mantle like a piece of evidence in a trial I'm destined to lose. In it, David's family looks perfect, his wife Michelle in her designer dress, their 2 children posed with practiced smiles, everyone's hair perfectly styled and clothes immaculate. Then there's me, off to the side with Emma and Sophie, all of us looking slightly rumpled despite my best efforts to clean us up for the occasion. What the photo doesn't show is the 2 hours I spent that morning trying to get the girls ready, wrestling with hair ribbons and finding matching shoes, or the way Emma cried because her dress wasn't as fancy as her cousin's. It doesn't show how I skipped breakfast to make sure we weren't late, or how I spent my last $40 on presents for everyone, while David casually mentioned his latest business trip to Europe. My mother, Helen, has been keeping score our entire lives, and David has always been winning. At 68, she's never made peace with having one son who became a successful corporate lawyer, and another who works construction. She introduces David as my son, the attorney, and me as Marcus. Just Marcus, as if my profession is too embarrassing to mention. David just closed another major case, she announced at family dinners, beaming with pride. The firm is considering him for partner next year. Then she turned to me with a forced smile. "And how's your work going, Marcus?" The pause before work speaks volumes. As if building homes and providing shelter for families isn't real work. As if the fact that I use my hands instead of pushing papers around a desk makes me less valuable. David doesn't help matters. At 36, he's 2 years older than me and has never let me forget it. He's the big brother who always knew better, who made the right choices, who followed the path our parents laid out for us. College, law school, corporate job, suitable wife, well-behaved children. He checked every box they wanted checked. You know, Marcus, he said during that Christmas gathering Michelle and I have been talking. We think the girls might benefit from some stability. Maybe they could spend summers with us. Give you a break? Let them see what a traditional family looks like. A traditional family, as if our family of 3 was somehow defective, incomplete, not worthy of the name. Jennifer, my younger sister, approaches things differently. At 31, she's the family's self-appointed expert on everything, despite having only one child of her own, a well-behaved 8-year-old who's never faced any real challenges. She reads parenting books like they're religious texts and quotes them at every opportunity. Studies show that children from single-parent homes are more likely to struggle academically, she informed me during our last family gathering, not bothering to lower her voice even though Emma and Sophie were within earshot. You might want to consider counseling for them. Early intervention is key. The way she talks about my daughters like they're damaged goods, like they're destined for failure simply because their mother left, makes my blood boil. But I've learned to bite my tongue, to swallow my anger for the sake of keeping peace. What none of them understand is that I see the way their own children behave when they think no one's looking. David's son Tyler, at 10, has a cruel streak that shows itself in how he treats smaller kids. His daughter Madison, 8, is anxious and desperate for approval, constantly seeking validation from adults because she never seems to get enough attention at home. Jennifer's son Kevin is perfectly behaved in public, but I've caught him lying to his mother about homework, about friends, about little things that don't matter but reveal a pattern of deception that worries me. Meanwhile, Emma and Sophie are kind, empathetic children who help each other with homework, who comfort other kids when they're sad, who say please and thank you without being prompted. They've learned resilience from losing their mother, learned to depend on each other and on me in ways that have made them stronger. But my family doesn't see any of that. They see the chaos of our morning routines, the mismatched socks, the hurried meals, the fact that I can't always keep up with the perfect standards they've set. They see what's missing instead of what's there. The irony is that the photo on my mother's mantle tells a different story if you know how to read it. Look closely at David's family, and you'll see the tension in Michelle's smile, the way Tyler's hand is clenched in a fist, the distance between husband and wife. Look at Jennifer's son, and you'll see a child who's learned to perform rather than simply be. Then look at my girls, rumpled and imperfect, but leaning into each other and into me with complete trust and love. That's what real family looks like, but nobody seems interested in seeing it. My daily schedule is written in my own handwriting, on a piece of paper taped to the refrigerator, color-coded and detailed. It's not because I'm naturally organized, it's because I have to be. When you're doing the job of 2 parents, there's no room for error, no margin for forgetting anything important. Morning, wake up, shower, coffee, check weather for appropriate clothes for the girls. Early morning, wake up Emma and Sophie, help them get dressed, make breakfast before school, pack lunches, backpacks, check homework folders, school drop-off, drive to school, walk them to their classroom doors, workday, drive to job site, work until afternoon, after school, pick up girls from school, snack time, homework help, evening, start dinner, laundry, house maintenance, dinner time, dinner cleanup, bath time, bedtime stories, tucking in, clean up for next day, night, collapse. It looks simple on paper, but each line represents a dozen potential complications. What happens when Emma can't find her favorite stuffed animal and has a meltdown? When Sophie spills juice on her school uniform and we have to start over? When my foreman calls with an emergency and I have to choose between work and picking up the girls on time? My job site is 45 minutes from the girls' school, which means I have to leave work early every day to make pickup. Some days I can make up the time by starting earlier, but that means leaving the girls with Mrs. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbor, who's kind enough to watch them before school. Other days, I just have to eat the lost wages and hope the job lasts long enough to pay our bills. The other guys on the crew don't understand. They go out for drinks after work, complain about overtime, take long lunch breaks. They have wives at home handling school pickups and dinner prep and bedtime routines. They don't understand that every minute of my day is accounted for. That spontaneity is a luxury I can't afford. Thompson, you leaving early again? My supervisor Mike asked last week, not bothering to hide his irritation. School pickup? I said, packing up my tools. Same time as always. Maybe you need to find a babysitter or something. This job's got deadlines. I wanted to tell him that I've tried 3 different after-school programs, but Emma's anxiety makes transitions difficult and Sophie won't leave her sister. I wanted to explain that the babysitter I found was charging more than I make in a day. Instead, I just nodded and left, knowing my reliability in other areas would have to speak for itself. The evening routine is where things get really complicated. Homework with 2 second graders means switching between Emma's careful, perfectionist approach and Sophie's creative, scattered style. Emma wants to do every assignment perfectly the first time, getting upset if her handwriting isn't neat enough. Sophie rushes through everything and has to be coaxed back to fix mistakes. "Daddy, this is too hard," Emma will say, tears forming over a math worksheet that should take 10 minutes. "I'm done," Sophie will announce, having scribbled through her reading comprehension without actually reading the passage. Meanwhile, I'm trying to cook dinner that both girls will eat, switch laundry loads, and respond to the school emails that seem to multiply every day. Permission slips, fundraisers, volunteer opportunities that I can't participate in because I'm working, parent meetings scheduled during work hours. The house reflects our constant state of managed chaos. Toys get picked up but not put away properly. Dishes get washed but not always put back in the right cabinets. The girls' artwork covers the refrigerator in layers because I can't bear to throw any of it away, even when there's no room for new masterpieces. My family sees this disorganization as proof of my inadequacy. When Jennifer stops by unannounced, she surveys the scene with barely concealed disapproval. "Marcus, you really need to establish better systems," she'll say, straightening books on the coffee table. "Children need structure, clean environments. It affects their development." What she doesn't see is that our structure exists in relationships, not in perfect housekeeping. The girls know they can count on me to be there every single day. They know homework gets done, even if it's at the kitchen table surrounded by dinner prep. They know bedtime stories happen every night, even if the laundry is still sitting in baskets. But some nights, after the girls are asleep and I'm facing another load of dishes, I wonder if my family is right. Would Emma and Sophie be better off? In a house where the kitchen is always spotless, where someone has time to organize their closets and plan elaborate birthday parties. Then I remember the way Sophie hugs me when I pick her up from school, the way Emma saves her best artwork to show me at dinner, the way they both climb into my lap during bedtime stories, even though they're getting too big for all three of us to fit in the chair. The schedule on the refrigerator doesn't capture those moments, but they're the reason all the chaos is worth it. David's LinkedIn profile reads like a corporate fairy tale. Senior partner at Morrison, Klein & Associates, Harvard Law graduate, devoted husband and father, passionate about corporate litigation and family values. The profile photo shows him in an expensive suit, standing in front of floor-to-ceiling windows in what I assume is his downtown office. What the profile doesn't mention is that he works 70-hour weeks, that he's missed more of his kids' school events than he's attended, or that his idea of quality time is checking emails while sitting in the same room as his family. But our family doesn't see any of that. They see the corner office, the 6-figure salary, the house in the suburbs, with the perfect lawn and the 3-car garage. They see Michelle, who gave up her teaching career to be a stay-at-home mom, who volunteers at the school and organizes charity events and makes Pinterest-worthy lunches for their children. David's firm is sending him to London next month, my mother announced during our last family dinner, practically glowing with pride. He's representing some major international client. Can you imagine? Our David, working with clients in Europe, and our David, as if his success belongs to all of us, as if his achievements somehow elevate the entire family. "That's great," I said, cutting up Sophie's chicken while she told me about her day at school. "How long will he be gone?" 2 weeks, Michelle answered, and I caught something in her voice: resignation, loneliness. It's a big opportunity for him. Tyler, their 10-year-old son, didn't look up from his phone. Madison, 8, was pushing food around her plate, not eating. These kids barely knew their father, but everyone pretended their family was perfect because David's career was successful. "Marcus, you should ask David for career advice," Jennifer suggested, as if I'd never considered trying to improve my situation. "Maybe he could help you transition into something more stable, more professional. As if building homes, creating spaces where families live and grow and make memories, isn't professional work. As if the fact that I come home with dirt under my fingernails instead of wearing a suit makes me less valuable." "I like what I do," I said quietly, helping Emma with her vegetables. "But think about the girl's future," my mother chimed in. "College, tuition, opportunities. David's children will have advantages. That what?" I interrupted, finally looking up from my daughter's plates. "That my daughters won't have." The table went quiet. Emma and Sophie continued eating, used to these conversations that danced around their supposed inadequacies. "I'm just saying," my mother continued, lowering her voice, "that financial stability matters. David can provide things for his children that you might struggle with." David cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with being held up as the standard. "I was failing to meet." "Marcus is doing fine, Mom. Different people have different paths." But the damage was done. The message was clear. David's path was the right one, the successful one, the one that provided security and status and respect. My path was the backup plan, the consolation prize, the option for people who couldn't achieve something better. What they didn't see was the cost of David's success. Michelle's isolation, spending her days managing household tasks while her husband built his career. Tyler's anger, acting out because his father was never around to teach him how to handle frustration. Madison's anxiety, desperately seeking attention because she competed with corporate clients for her father's time. Meanwhile, Emma and Sophie knew they were my priority. They knew that when they spoke, I listened. They knew that their school events mattered to me, that their problems were my problems, that their happiness was more important than any career advancement. But try explaining that to a family that measures success in salary figures and job titles. You know what I think? David said later, as we were cleaning up after dinner. I think you're doing great with the girls. They're good kids, Marcus. Really good kids. It was the first genuine compliment he'd given me in years, and I was grateful for it, but I also noticed that he said it quietly, when no one else could hear, as if acknowledging my success as a parent might somehow diminish his own status in the family. The truth was, I didn't want David's life. I didn't want the stress, the long hours, the distance from my children. I wanted what I had: time with my daughters, the satisfaction of building things with my hands, the knowledge that I was present for the people who mattered most. But admitting that meant accepting that I would always be seen as the brother who settled for less, who chose the easier path, who didn't have the ambition or ability to achieve something greater. And some days that judgment felt heavier than any construction materials I lifted at work. I found my old report card from 3rd grade while cleaning out my mother's attic last summer, tucked between photo albums and Christmas decorations. It was evidence of a truth my family had somehow forgotten. I was a good student once, A's and B's across the board, with teacher comments like "Marcus is a joy to have in class," and shows excellent problem-solving skills. Mrs. Henderson had written at the bottom, "Marcus is creative, kind, and naturally helpful to other students. He will do well in whatever path he chooses." But that's not the story my mother tells. In her version, I was always the difficult child, the one who struggled in school, who couldn't live up to expectations. She's rewritten our family history to support her narrative that my current struggles were inevitable. "You were always impulsive, Marcus," she said during our last conversation, shaking her head with that familiar look of disappointment. "Remember when you quit the soccer team? When you changed your major in college? You never stuck with anything long enough to succeed." What she doesn't mention is that I quit soccer because I was working part-time to help pay for college. That I changed my major from business to education because I wanted to teach, to make a difference in kids' lives. She doesn't mention that I only dropped out of the teaching program when Sarah got pregnant and we needed my income to support our growing family. Every decision I've made has been about responsibility, about taking care of the people I love. But in my mother's version, they're all evidence of my character flaws. "I don't understand how you ended up like this," she said last month, gesturing around my kitchen with its mismatched chairs and pile of school papers on the counter. David was raised in the same house, with the same values. He managed to build a successful life. The implications stung. That my life wasn't successful, that raising 2 happy, healthy daughters while maintaining steady employment wasn't an achievement worth recognizing. "I tried to teach you both the importance of education, of making good choices," she continued. David listened. He worked hard, married well, built a career. "You," she shrugged, as if my path was too disappointing to put into words. "Married. Well, as if the value of a woman was measured by her contribution to a man's success. As if Sarah's abandonment of our children was somehow my fault for not choosing better. The girls need stability," she said. "Not for the first time. They need structure, proper guidance. Maybe David and Michelle could." "No," I interrupted, more firmly than I usually spoke to her. "The girls are fine. They're happy, they're healthy, they're loved. But look at this place," she said, gesturing at the toys scattered across the living room floor. "Look at how you're struggling. This isn't what I wanted for you." The sadness in her voice was real, and that made it worse. She genuinely believed that my life was a tragedy, that I was failing at everything that mattered. She couldn't see that coming home to Emma and Sophie's hugs, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories. These weren't consolation prizes for a life that hadn't worked out. They were the best parts of my day, the moments that made everything else worthwhile. "I wanted grandchildren," she said quietly, "but I wanted them to have the kind of childhood David and Jennifer's children have. Private schools, family vacations, college funds. I wanted you to be able to provide for them properly." The irony was that her grandchildren were getting something David and Jennifer's kids weren't. A parent who was actually present, who prioritized their emotional needs over social status, who measured success by their happiness rather than their achievements. But try explaining that to a woman who still introduced me as my son Marcus, while introducing David as my son the lawyer. The distinction was always there, hanging in the air like a judgment that could never be appealed. The worst part was that her disappointment wasn't cruel, was heartbroken. She looked at me and saw potential wasted, opportunities missed, a life that could have been so much more. She didn't understand that I looked at my daughters and saw everything I'd ever wanted to achieve. "I love you, Marcus," she said, as she prepared to leave that day. "But I worry about you. I worry about the girls. I just want what's best for everyone." I knew she meant it. Her love was real, even if it came wrapped in criticism and conditional approval. But her definition of what's best didn't include trusting me to know what was right for my own children. After she left, I sat in my kitchen looking at the pile of school papers she'd criticized. Emma's math homework with a gold star. Sophie's creative writing assignment about her favorite person, me, Permission slips for field trips I'd make sure to attend even if it meant losing wages. Maybe we didn't have college funds or private school tuition. Maybe our house wasn't in the best neighborhood and our furniture came from garage sales. But we had something that couldn't be bought. The unshakable knowledge that we belonged together, that we were each other's priority, that love was more important than any external measure of success. I just wished my mother could see it. The hand-drawn Father's Day cards are still taped to my bathroom mirror, where I see them every morning when I brush my teeth. Emma's card shows the three of us holding hands under a rainbow, with careful lettering that reads "Best Daddy Ever." Sophie's is more abstract swirls of color, that she explained represents all the happy feelings in our family. These cards mean more to me than any professional recognition I could ever receive. They're proof that despite everything, the financial struggles, the family criticism, the daily chaos, I'm getting the most important thing right. My daughters feel loved, secure, and happy in the family we've built together. Our Sunday morning tradition started by accident. The first weekend after Sarah left, I was overwhelmed trying to manage grocery shopping, laundry, and entertaining to confused 4-year-olds. I decided to make pancakes for breakfast, and the girls wanted to help. What should have been a simple meal turned into an hour-long adventure of measuring, mixing, and laughing at the misshapen pancakes we created together. Can we make pancakes again next Sunday? Emma asked, syrup coating her fingers and smile. And can we make them funny shapes? Sophie added, holding up a pancake that looked vaguely like a butterfly. 3 years later, we still make pancakes every Sunday morning. The kitchen gets messy, we go through twice as much batter as necessary, and we often end up with pancakes that look like abstract art. But those mornings are sacred to us in hurried time, where we talk about the week ahead, share dreams and worries, and simply enjoy being together. The girls have become excellent pancake assistants. Emma measures ingredients with mathematical precision, while Sophie adds creative flair with chocolate chips and berries. They take turns flipping, cheering when someone manages a perfect flip, and laughing when pancakes end up folded in half or stuck to the ceiling. Daddy, Sophie said last Sunday, Tyler's mom makes him protein shakes for breakfast because pancakes aren't healthy. What do you think? I asked, genuinely curious about her opinion. I think our pancakes are healthy because they make us happy, she said, and I couldn't argue with that logic. Our bedtime routine is equally sacred. Every night, after baths and teeth brushing, we pile into Emma's bed for story time. Sometimes we read books, sometimes I make up stories about brave princesses who solve problems with kindness and creativity. The girls have started contributing their own chapters, creating elaborate adventures that usually involve magical animals and families who love each other no matter what. Once upon a time, Emma began last week, there was a daddy who worked very hard every day, but always came home to his 2 daughters, who loved him so much that they drew him pictures every single day. And the daddy kept all the pictures. Sophie continued, even when they weren't very good, because they were made with love. Their stories always come back to family, to love, to the safety they feel in our little circle. These aren't children who feel deprived or damaged. They're children who understand that family comes in many forms, and ours is beautiful in its own way. Our weekend adventures reflect our budget constraints. But the girls don't see limitations, they see possibilities. We have picnics in the park instead of expensive restaurants. We visit the library instead of buying books. We create art projects with supplies from the dollar store instead of taking expensive classes. Look what we made, Emma announced last Saturday, holding up a sculpture created from empty cereal boxes, toilet paper rolls, and enough glue to hold together a small building. It's a castle for brave princesses, Sophie explained, and it has a special room for daddies who tell good bedtime stories. Their resilience amazes me. When other children at school talk about their mothers, Emma and Sophie don't get sad, they talk about their daddy. When classmates mention family vacations to Disney World, my girls talk about our camping trips to the state park. They've learned to find joy in what we have rather than mourning what we lack. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Emma and Sophie is their emotional intelligence. They comfort each other when one has a bad day. They share without being asked. They notice when other children are sad and try to help. They've learned empathy not from lectures about kindness, but from living in a family where emotions are acknowledged and supported. Daddy seems tired tonight, I overheard Emma whispered to Sophie during a particularly difficult week when work was stressful and bills were piling up. Should we draw him pictures? Sophie whispered back. And maybe we could make him tea like he makes for us when we're sad. They brought me construction paper drawings and a cup of lukewarm water with a tea bag floating in it, presented with such love and concern that I nearly cried. These are the moments my family doesn't see when they visit our chaotic house and judge our unconventional life. They see the surface, the toys on the floor, the mismatched furniture, the evidence of a man trying to do a job meant for 2 people. They don't see the depth of connection, the security, the unshakable bond that keeps us strong even when everything else feels uncertain. My daughters know they are loved completely, unconditionally, and consistently. They know their father will always be there, will always listen, will always choose them over anything else. And in their innocent wisdom, No, that's the most important thing any parent can provide. Emma's anxiety journal was my idea, suggested by the school counselor when Emma started having trouble sleeping. Sometimes writing down worries helps children process them, Mrs. Chen explained. It gives them a place to put the big feelings. What I didn't expect was how much the journal would reveal about my daughter's inner world, and how much it would break my heart. I don't like when kids ask where my mommy is, Emma wrote in her careful second-grade handwriting. I tell them she had to go away, but they keep asking why. Sophie says I should tell them it's not their business, but I don't want to be mean. The entries continued. Madison said her mommy packs her lunch every day and asked who packs mine. I said Daddy does, but she looks sad for me. I don't know why. Daddy makes good sandwiches. Reading these entries, I realized that Emma was carrying a burden I'd hoped to spare her from, while I'd focused on creating stability and love at home. I couldn't protect her from the outside world's reaction to our family structure. The school social worker called during my lunch break one Thursday. Mr. Thompson, I wanted to discuss Emma's situation with you. She's been having some difficulties during social situations. What kind of difficulties? I asked, stepping away from the noisy job site. She's become withdrawn during activities that involve family discussions. When children talk about their mothers, Emma tends to isolate herself. Yesterday, she spent recess sitting alone instead of playing with friends. My heart sank. What can we do to help her? I think it would be beneficial for you to come in for a meeting. We need to develop some strategies to help Emma navigate these situations. The meeting was scheduled for the following week, which meant I had to leave work early and lose wages I couldn't afford to lose, but Emma's well-being was worth more than any paycheck. Sophie handled things differently. Where Emma internalized her feelings, Sophie became fiercely protective of our family structure. She defended our family to anyone who questioned it, sometimes with an intensity that worried me. Mrs. Patterson asked why our daddy comes to the parent breakfast instead of our mommy, Sophie announced one evening. I told her our daddy is better than most mommies, and daddies together. What did she say? I asked, helping her with her math. Homework, she said. That was sweet, but children need both parents. So I told her some children don't have any parents, and they would be happy to have a daddy like ours. At 7 years old, Sophie was already developing the armor she'd need to protect herself from other people's pity and judgment. Part of me was proud of her strength, but another part grieved for the innocence she was losing. The parent-teacher conferences became exercises in managing other adults' assumptions about our family. Teachers would speak to me with careful sympathy, as if I were a temporary guardian waiting for the real parent to show up. How are the girls adjusting to their situation? Mrs. Miller asked during our first conference. They're doing well, I replied. This is our situation. This is our family. But I could see the doubt in her eyes, the unspoken belief that children needed two parents to thrive, that our family was somehow incomplete or damaged. The fundraising events were another challenge. The school constantly organized activities that assumed two-parent households with flexible schedules and disposable income, bake sales that required homemade items, store-bought cookies weren't allowed, silent auctions with minimum bid amounts that exceeded our grocery budget, volunteer opportunities during work hours. We need parent volunteers for the fall festival, the PTA president announced at a meeting I'd managed to attend. We're looking for committee chairs, setup crews, and booth operators. I raised my hand. I can help with setup, but I can't take time off work during the day. Oh, she said, clearly not expecting a father to volunteer. Well, most of our setup happens during school hours. The mothers usually handle that while the fathers help with evening breakdown. The mothers, the fathers, everything was divided along traditional gender lines, with no consideration for families like ours. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was different. From the beginning, she treated our family as complete, valid, and capable. She never asked about Emma's mother or suggested that the girls were missing something essential. She focused on their academic progress, their social development, their individual needs. Emma is reading above grade level, she reported during our conference. She's also showing excellent critical thinking skills in math. Sophie is creative and intuitive. She approaches problems from unique angles that often lead to innovative solutions. She talked about my daughters as whole people, not as children defined by what they lacked. She saw their strengths instead of their deficits, their potential instead of their limitations. I have to say, Mr. Thompson, she added quietly, your daughters are remarkably well-adjusted. They're kind, empathetic, and resilient. Whatever you're doing at home, it's working. It was the first time a school professional had acknowledged that our family might actually be succeeding, that my parenting might be effective rather than compensatory. Walking to the car after that conference, I felt lighter than I had in months. Emma and Sophie were thriving academically and socially. They were developing into confident, capable young people who happened to have one parent instead of two. The challenges would continue, the questions from other children, the assumptions from adults, the constant need to prove that our family was legitimate and successful. But for the first time, I had professional validation that we were doing more than just surviving. We were actually doing well. Jennifer's parenting book collection takes up an entire shelf in her living room, organized alphabetically like a library. The Whole Brain Child? How to Talk So Kids Will Listen. The 5 Love Languages of Children, dozens of titles that she quotes with the authority of someone who's found the secret to perfect parenting. When she showed up at my door on a Saturday morning with 2 of these books tucked under her arm, I knew we were in for trouble. I've been thinking about our conversation at Mom's, she said, settling herself at my kitchen table while Emma and Sophie played in the living room. I really think there are some strategies that could help you create more structure here. I poured myself coffee and sat across from her, already feeling defensive. What kind of strategies? Well, for starters, routine charts, she said, opening one of the books to a page she'd marked with a sticky note. Children thrive on predictability. You should have visual schedules posted where the girls can see them, with specific times for homework, chores, and recreational activities. I glanced at the refrigerator, where my handwritten schedule was already taped. We have routines, Jen, they work for us, but are they consistent? She pressed. Are there consequences for not following through? This book explains the importance of natural consequences versus punishment-based discipline. She flipped through pages marked with dozens of sticky notes, each one representing another way I was apparently failing my daughters. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was a woman with one well-behaved 8-year-old lecturing me about raising twins who'd been through trauma. Look at this section on emotional regulation, she continued, pointing to a highlighted paragraph. Children from disrupted family situations often struggle with emotional control. You need to implement specific strategies to help them process their feelings about their mother's absence. They're doing fine with their feelings, I said, trying to keep my voice level. We talk about things. They know they can come to me with anything. Jennifer's expression suggested this was exactly the problem. Marcus, talking isn't enough. You need structured emotional learning, role-playing exercises, feeling charts, guided journal prompts. These girls have experienced significant trauma. You can't just wing it and hope for the best. Emma appeared in the doorway, drawn by the serious tone of our conversation. Daddy, can we make pancakes now? In a little while, sweetheart, I said. Aunt Jennifer and I are talking. Actually, Jennifer said, this is perfect timing. Emma, come here for a minute. Emma approached cautiously. Jennifer had a way of turning every interaction with my daughters into an assessment, and Emma had learned to be wary. Emma, I want to ask you about your feelings. Do you ever feel sad about not having a mommy? The question hit the room like a physical blow. Emma's face went through a series of emotions, confusion, hurt, and finally, a protective shield sliding into place. I have a daddy, Emma said quietly, and Sophie, we're a family. Of course you are, Jennifer said in the overly gentle voice she used when she thought she was being therapeutic. But it's okay to feel sad sometimes about missing your mommy. It's natural to wish things were different. I don't wish things were different, Emma said, her voice getting smaller. I like our family. I stood up, anger rising in my chest. Jen, that's enough. I'm trying to help, she said, looking genuinely confused by my reaction. The book says children need permission to express difficult emotions. She's clearly repressing her feelings about the abandonment. She's not repressing anything, I said, moving to stand beside Emma. She's adjusted, she's happy, leave her alone. But Jennifer wasn't finished. Sophie, she called to the living room. Can you come here too? Sophie bounced into the kitchen, immediately sensing the tension. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I said quickly. Aunt Jennifer was just girls. I want to talk to you about something important, Jennifer interrupted. You know how most children have both a mommy and a daddy? How do you feel about only having a daddy? Sophie's protective instincts kicked in immediately. Our daddy is better than most mommies and daddies together, she said, unconsciously echoing what she'd told her teacher. But don't you sometimes wish you had a mommy too? Someone to do mommy things with you. What are mommy things? Sophie asked, genuinely curious. Jennifer seemed to realize she'd painted herself into a corner. Well, like ... cooking and cleaning, and ... nurturing activities. Daddy cooks, Sophie said. And he cleans. And he reads us stories and helps with homework and takes care of us when we're sick. What else would a mommy do? I felt a surge of pride at Sophie's response, but Jennifer looked troubled by it. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said to me quietly. They've idealized you to compensate for the loss. It's not healthy. They haven't idealized anything, I said, my voice getting harder. They're describing their reality. I do take care of them. I am present for them. Just because that doesn't fit your idea of how families should work doesn't mean it's wrong. Jennifer sighed and opened her second book. Look, I know you're doing your best, but these girls need more than you can provide alone. They need female role models, structured learning opportunities, exposure to traditional family dynamics. They have female role models. Their teachers, Mrs. Rodriguez next door, the librarian they love. They don't need to be fixed. Jennifer, Marcus, I'm worried about you, she said, her voice softening with what she probably thought was compassion. You're overwhelmed, you're defensive, and you're not seeing clearly how this situation is affecting the girls. Maybe they could spend more time at my house, or Mom's. Get some stability, some proper supervision. The suggestion hung in the air like a threat. My family had been circling this idea for months, the notion that Emma and Sophie would be better off with someone else. Someone more qualified, someone who could provide what I apparently couldn't. Get out, I said quietly. Marcus, get out of my house. Take your books and your theories and your judgment, and get out. I'm trying to help. No. You're trying to fix something that isn't broken. You're trying to save children who don't need saving from a father who loves them completely. Jennifer gathered her books, shaking her head with disappointment. I hope you'll think about what I've said. Those girls deserve better than this. After she left, Emma and Sophie stood in the kitchen looking uncertain. Are we in trouble? Emma asked. Are we broken? Sophie added. I knelt down and pulled them both into a hug. No, you're not in trouble, and you're definitely not broken. You're perfect exactly as you are. Then why did Aunt Jennifer seem sad? Emma asked. Sometimes adults disagree about things, I said. Aunt Jennifer thinks families should look a certain way, but I think families should feel a certain way. How does our family feel to you? Safe, Emma said immediately. Happy, Sophie added. Like home, they said together, and that was all I needed to know. The stack of past due bills sits on my kitchen counter, like a monument to all the ways I'm failing to provide for my daughters. Electric bill, second notice. Car insurance, payment overdue. Credit card, minimum payment missed. Each envelope represents a choice I've had to make, a priority I've had to set. The math is simple and unforgiving. My construction job pays decent wages, but not enough to cover childcare, rent, utilities, groceries, and everything else that comes with raising 2 children alone. Every month is a careful calculation of what can wait, what can be negotiated, and what absolutely must be paid. This month, the car insurance lost. I decided I could risk driving uninsured for a few weeks rather than let the electricity get shut off. Emma needs her night light to sleep peacefully, and Sophie's asthma nebulizer requires power. The choice was easy, even if it kept me awake. At night, worrying about what would happen if I got pulled over, I've become an expert at creative budgeting. Generic cereal instead of name brands, thrift store clothes that I wash and mend carefully, library books instead of bookstore purchases, birthday parties at the park instead of expensive venues. Daddy, why don't we ever go to McDonald's, like Tyler's family? Sophie asked last week, watching a commercial for Happy Meals. We make better burgers at home, I said, which was true. It was also cheaper, healthier, and meant I could control what they ate. Can we get the toys, though? Emma asked hopefully. I looked at the girls' expectant faces and felt the familiar weight of disappointing them. Maybe for your birthday, I said, knowing that by their birthday I'd find some other way to make them happy that didn't require money. We didn't have. The irony is that my family thinks I'm irresponsible with money. They see the pile of bills, the second-hand furniture, the careful rationing of everything from groceries to gasoline, and they assume I'm bad at managing finances. You need to budget better, my mother advised during her last visit, surveying our sparse pantry. David and Michelle always seem to have everything under control. David and Michelle have 2 incomes, family, money to fall back on, and relatives who help with unexpected expenses. David's law firm pays for his health insurance, his company car, his business lunches. Michelle's parents contributed to their house down payment and still send Christmas checks that cover months of expenses for us. But try explaining the difference between having financial struggles and being financially irresponsible to someone who's never had to choose between groceries and gas money. I work every hour I can get, overtime when it's available, weekend side jobs when my boss knows someone who needs help, evening shifts doing maintenance work for extra cash. The girls spend Saturday mornings with Mrs. Rodriguez while I patch roofs or paint houses for neighbors who pay in cash. Daddy works a lot, Emma observed last month, not as a complaint, but as a simple fact she'd noticed. He works because he loves us, Sophie responded with 7-year-old wisdom. They're right on both counts. I do work a lot, and it is because I love them. Every extra hour, every sore muscle, every missed lunch break is an investment in their security, their future, their ability to stay together as a family. The hardest part is hiding the stress from them. When the electric bill is overdue and I'm calculating whether I can pay it before they shut off the power, I still read bedtime stories with a calm voice. When I'm surviving on peanut butter sandwiches so there's enough food for their school lunches, I still sit with them at dinner and ask about their day. They know we don't have much money, kids aren't stupid, and they notice things like why we shop at discount stores and why Daddy always says we'll see when they ask for things they want. But I work hard to make sure they never feel poor, never feel like they're missing out on anything essential. We have everything we need, I tell them when they notice other families have things we don't. We have each other, we have our home, we have love. Everything else is just extra. Most of the time, they believe me. Most of the time, I believe it too. But late at night, when I'm sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator and a pile of bills, the weight of being solely responsible for their financial security feels overwhelming. What if I get injured and can't work? What if the construction industry slows down and I lose hours? What if the car breaks down and I can't afford to fix it? The safety net that most families take for granted, the second income, the family support, the emergency exist for us. We live paycheck to paycheck, one crisis away from serious trouble. My family doesn't understand this reality. They see my financial struggles as evidence of poor choices rather than the inevitable result of single-income parenting. They offer advice about budgeting and responsibility while maintaining their own comfortable lifestyles supported by dual incomes and family wealth. Maybe you should look into assistance programs, Jennifer suggested last month, as if I hadn't already explored every option available. Or consider moving back in with Mom temporarily, David added. Just until you get back on your feet. Moving back home would mean admitting defeat, accepting that I couldn't provide for my daughters independently. It would mean subjecting Emma and Sophie to daily criticism, constant suggestions that they'd be better off elsewhere. An environment where their father was seen as inadequate and their family structure was viewed as broken. The bills on my counter represent more than financial stress. They represent my determination to maintain our independence, to prove that we can make it on our own, to show my daughters that love and commitment matter more than money. Some months are harder than others. Some months I have to swallow my pride and ask Mrs. Rodriguez if she can watch the girls for free while I work an extra shift. Some months we eat a lot of pasta and peanut butter, but we're making it. Not comfortably, not easily, but we're making it together, and that's worth more than any amount of financial security that comes with strings attached. The voice recording on my phone was an accident. I'd been trying to record a reminder to myself about Emma's doctor appointment. When my family gathering erupted into the confrontation that would change everything, it was my mother's birthday, and the whole family had gathered at David's house for what was supposed to be a celebration. The girls were playing in the backyard with their cousins, while the adults sat on the deck, watching them through the sliding glass doors. Everything started normally enough. Conversation about work, the weather, David's latest legal victory, but then my mother started talking about the girls' upcoming school year. I've been thinking, she said, sipping her wine and watching Emma help Sophie on the swings. Maybe it's time to consider some changes for the girls, better opportunities. What kind of opportunities? I asked. Though I already knew where this was heading. Private school, Jennifer chimed in. Better academic programs, more structure, appropriate role models. The girls are doing fine at their current school, I said, keeping my voice level for the sake of the birthday celebration. Are they though? David asked, and something in his tone made me look up sharply. I mean, really? Tyler mentioned that Emma has been having some social difficulties. My blood started to heat. What social difficulties? Kids teasing her about not having a mother, Jennifer said with false sympathy. It's affecting her self-esteem, her ability to form friendships. She needs to be in an environment where she can thrive. Emma is thriving, I said firmly. Both girls are happy, healthy, and doing well in school. Marcus, my mother said gently, we can all see how hard you're trying, but maybe it's time to accept that this situation isn't working. The girls deserve stability, proper guidance, a real family environment. A real family environment. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. We are a real family, I said, my voice getting harder. Of course you are, David said quickly, but let's be realistic. You're struggling financially, you're overwhelmed, and the girls are starting to show signs of adjustment issues. What adjustment issues? Jennifer exchanged a look with my mother. Well, Sophie's been acting out at school, getting defensive when anyone mentions mothers, being aggressive toward children who ask about her family situation. She's defending our family, I said. She's standing up for herself. She's compensating, Jennifer corrected. Both girls are vivid to mature too quickly, take on emotional responsibilities that aren't appropriate for their age. Emma, mother's Sophie. Sophie protects Emma, and both of them worry about taking care of you. That's not true, Marcus. Listen to yourself. My mother interrupted. You're so defensive you can't see clearly. These children need more than you can provide alone. The conversation was spiraling, but I couldn't seem to stop it. Around us, other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, were starting to pay attention. What had begun as a private family discussion was becoming a public intervention. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. David leaned forward, using his lawyer voice. We've all been talking, and we think it might be best if the girls spent more time with other family members. Maybe lived with Mom during the school year, visited you on weekends, or stayed with Jennifer and her family, where they could have a more traditional household structure. The suggestion hung in the air like poison gas. They wanted to take my daughters away from me. You've all been talking, I repeated slowly, about taking my children away from me, not taking them away. Jennifer said quickly, sharing custody, giving them opportunities you can't provide. Better schools, stable home environments, proper supervision. I provide proper supervision. Marcus, be honest, my mother said, her voice heavy with disappointment. Look at your life. Look at their lives. This isn't what any of us wanted for them. That's when something broke inside me. 3 years of criticism, judgment, and barely contained disdain finally pushed me past my breaking point. You want me to be honest? I said, my voice rising. Fine, let's be honest. You've never supported me as a father. You've never acknowledged that I might actually be good at this. You've spent 3 years waiting for me to fail so you could swoop in and fix everything. That's not true. It is true. I stood up, no longer caring who was listening. You see what you want to see. You see the messy house, the tight budget, the fact that I can't provide everything David can provide for his kids, but you don't see that my daughters are happy. You don't see that they're confident, kind, resilient children who know they're loved unconditionally. Marcus, please lower your voice, David said, glancing toward the backyard where the children were still playing. No, I'm done lowering my voice. I'm done making myself smaller so you can feel better about your judgments. Emma and Sophie are not broken children who need to be rescued. They're thriving children who happen to have one parent instead of two. One parent who can barely keep up, Jennifer said sharply. One parent who's drowning and too proud to admit it. I'm not drowning. I'm swimming harder than you've ever had to swim, and I'm keeping my family afloat. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We love you, Marcus. We love the girls. We just want what's best. What's best for them is staying with their father, who's devoted his entire life to their happiness and well-being. What's best for them is not being constantly told their family is inadequate or that their father is failing them. Through the glass doors, I could see Emma and Sophie looking toward the deck with worried expressions. They couldn't hear the words, but they could feel the tension. Look what you're doing to them, I said, gesturing toward my daughters. Look how you're making them feel about their own family. We're trying to help, David said weakly. No, you're trying to make yourselves feel better about judging me. You're trying to fix something that isn't broken so you can stop feeling guilty about never really supporting us. I grabbed my phone from the table, not realizing it was still recording, and started gathering our things. We're leaving, I said, and until you can accept that Emma, Sophie, and I are a complete, successful, happy family, exactly as we are, we won't be coming to these gatherings anymore. The stunned silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. They had never expected me to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, to prioritize my daughter's well-being over their comfort. As I walked toward the backyard to collect Emma and Sophie, I could hear my mother crying and my siblings whispering urgently among themselves. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt strong instead of defensive. My daughters deserved a father who fought for them, who protected them from people who couldn't see their worth, and that's exactly what they were going to get. The self-help book on single parenting sits on my nightstand, its pages worn from multiple readings. Single Dad's Survival Guide, Raising Happy Children and Finding Your Own Strength, became my roadmap during the weeks following the confrontation. With my family. Chapter titles like Building Confidence in Your Parenting Decisions and Creating Boundaries with Unsupportive Family Members felt like they were written specifically for my situation. For the first time, I was reading advice that validated my experiences rather than suggesting I was failing at everything. The book introduced me to the concept of protective distancing, the idea that sometimes loving families means limiting contact with people who consistently undermine your well-being. It wasn't about cutting people off permanently, but about creating space to heal and grow without constant criticism. You can't control other people's opinions, the author wrote, but you can control how much access they have to your life and your children's lives. 2 weeks after the birthday party confrontation, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I called my mother and told her we wouldn't be attending family gatherings for a while. I need some time to focus on what's best for Emma and Sophie, I explained. We need space to be happy without constantly defending our choices. The conversation was difficult. Mom cried, accused me of being vindictive, suggested I was hurting the girls by depriving them of family relationships. But I held firm. When you're ready to accept us as we are, I said, we'll be here. But I won't subject my daughters to an environment where they're constantly told their family isn't good enough. The weeks that followed were actually peaceful. Without the stress of family gatherings and criticism, our home felt lighter. Emma's anxiety decreased. Noticeably, she stopped having nightmares and began sleeping through the night consistently. Sophie's defensive behavior at school diminished as she felt more secure about our family's worth. During this time, I connected with other single parents through an online support group recommended in the book. Reading their stories, sharing experiences, and receiving encouragement from people who understood my challenges made an enormous difference in my confidence. The hardest part isn't the practical stuff, wrote another single dad in the group. It's the constant feeling that you have to prove yourself to people who will never be satisfied. Once you stop trying to prove anything and just focus on your kids, everything gets easier. He was right. I stopped second-guessing every parenting decision, stopped comparing our family to others, stopped feeling defensive about our choices. Instead, I focused on what was working. Emma and Sophie were happy, healthy, and thriving. I also started seeing a counselor not because my family was right about me needing help, but because I wanted to process my own childhood experiences and break cycles that might be affecting my daughters. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that my family's criticism said more about their discomfort with non-traditional families than about my actual parenting abilities. Children need consistency, love, and security, she explained during one of our sessions. They don't need perfect houses, unlimited resources, or traditional family structures. You're providing what matters most. The counseling helped me recognize patterns I'd inherited from my own childhood, the tendency to seek approval from people who withheld it, the belief that love had to be earned through performance. I didn't want to pass those patterns on to Emma and Sophie. I started practicing what the self-help book called confident parenting, making decisions based on my children's needs rather than other people's expectations. When Emma wanted to quit gymnastics because she wasn't enjoying it, I supported her choice instead of worrying about what others might think. When Sophie expressed interest in taking art classes, I found a way to make it work financially because her happiness mattered more than the budget strain. The girls responded to this newfound confidence by becoming even more secure and happy. They stopped asking why we weren't seeing Grandma and the family as much, and started focusing on the positive relationships we were building with neighbors, teachers, and other families who accepted us as we were. Mrs. Rodriguez next door became like a grandmother to the girls, sharing stories of her own childhood and teaching them to cook traditional recipes. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, started setting aside new children's books she thought they'd enjoy. Emma's teacher sent encouraging notes home about her academic progress and social development. We were building our own community of support. People who saw our strengths instead of our deficits, who celebrated our successes instead of focusing on our challenges. One evening, as I was reading the self-help book while the girls did their homework at the kitchen table, Sophie looked up and said, "Daddy, you seem happier lately." "Do I?" I asked, genuinely curious about her observation. "Yeah, you smile more, and you don't look worried all the time." Emma nodded in agreement. "It's like you're not scared anymore." Their words hit me with unexpected emotion. I hadn't realized how much my stress and defensive posture had affected them. How much lighter our home had become once I stopped trying to meet impossible standards. "I'm not scared anymore," I told them honestly. "I know we're exactly where we're supposed to be, exactly who we're supposed to be." That night, after the girls were asleep, I wrote in the journal I'd started keeping as part of my healing process. Today, I realized that protecting my daughters from people who make them feel inadequate is not selfish, it's essential. They deserve to grow up knowing their worth, their value, their right to take up space in the world. The book had taught me that healing isn't just about recovering from damage, it's about growing into the person and parent you're meant to be. For the first time since Sarah left, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just surviving. Mrs. Patterson's handwritten notes were spread across her desk like evidence of something remarkable. Detailed observations about Emma and Sophie's behavior, academic progress, and social development filled 2 full pages in her careful teacher's handwriting. "Thank you for coming in today, Mr. Thompson," she said as I settled into the small plastic chair across from her desk. "I know it's difficult to take time off work for these conferences." "The girls are my priority," I replied, meaning every word. "How are they doing?" Mrs. Patterson smiled in a way that immediately put me at ease. "They're doing exceptionally well. In fact, that's why I wanted to meet with you today. I have some things I'd like to share." She picked up Emma's folder first. Emma is reading at a 4th grade level, 2 grades above where she should be. Her comprehension scores are in the 95th percentile. More importantly, she's developed excellent critical thinking skills. When we discussed the book Charlotte's Web last week, Emma made connections between the themes of friendship and loyalty that impressed me. My chest swelled with pride. She loves reading. "We go to the library every Saturday. It shows, but it's not just her academic achievement that stands out." Mrs. Patterson pulled out a sheet of paper covered with her observations. "Emma shows remarkable emotional maturity. Last month, when a new student was having trouble adjusting, Emma took it upon herself to include him at recess. She explained to other children why it's important to make new students feel welcome." She flipped to Sophie's section. Sophie is equally impressive, though in different ways. Her creativity is off the charts. The story she wrote about a family of astronauts who explore feelings instead of planets was the most imaginative piece I've seen in 20 years of teaching. "Sophie has always been creative," I said, remembering her abstract Father's Day card. "But there's more. Sophie has what I call emotional intelligence. She notices when other children are struggling and responds with genuine empathy." She spent her entire recess sitting with a classmate who was upset about a family situation at home. Mrs. Patterson set down the papers and looked at me directly. "Mr. Thompson, I need to tell you something. In 30 years of teaching, I've worked with thousands of families. I've seen children from every kind of background to parent homes, single-parent homes, extended families, blended families. I've seen children who have every material advantage, and children who struggle with basic needs." She paused, and I found myself holding my breath. "Your daughters are among the most well-adjusted, emotionally intelligent, and genuinely kind children I have ever taught." The words hit me like a physical force. After 3 years of being told I wasn't enough, wasn't providing enough, wasn't doing enough, here was a professional educator telling me that my daughters were exceptional. "They're remarkable young people," she continued. "They're confident without being arrogant, independent without being detached, empathetic without being overly sensitive. They handle challenges with resilience and treat their classmates with consistent kindness. They're good kids, I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. Mr. Thompson, they're not just good kids, they're extraordinarily well-parented kids. The validation was overwhelming. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Mrs. Patterson seemed to understand my emotional state. She gave me a moment to collect myself before continuing. I see a lot of children who struggle with anxiety, aggression, social difficulties, academic problems. Many of these children come from homes that look perfect from the outside, to parents. Comfortable incomes, all the right opportunities. But something is missing. She gestured toward her notes about Emma and Sophie. Your daughters have something many of their classmates lack: emotional security. They know they're loved unconditionally. They know their worth isn't dependent on their performance or their behavior. They know they can count on their parent to be present, engaged, and supportive. I try my best, I said quietly. Your best is extraordinary, she replied firmly. Emma and Sophie talk about you constantly, not in a dependent way, but with genuine admiration and love. They're proud of their father. They feel secure in your relationship. They trust you completely. Mrs. Patterson pulled out another sheet of paper. I keep notes on parent involvement, and I have to share something with you. You attend every conference, every school event you possibly can. You respond to emails promptly. You follow through on homework concerns. You advocate for your daughters when necessary, but don't helicopter parent. She looked up from her notes. Most importantly, your daughters feel seen and valued at home. That's evident in how they treat themselves and others at school. What do you mean? I asked. Children who feel truly loved and valued at home extend that same treatment to others. Emma and Sophie are kind to their classmates because they've learned kindness at home. They're confident because they feel valued. They're resilient because they've learned that challenges can be overcome with support and effort. Mrs. Patterson leaned forward slightly. Mr. Thompson, I want to tell you something, and I hope you'll really hear me. You are the best parent I've ever met. The words echoed in my mind, overwhelming in their simple power. The best parent I've ever met. In 30 years of teaching, she continued, I've never seen children who are so secure, so happy, so well prepared for life's challenges. Whatever you're doing at home, whatever approach you're taking to parenting, it's working beautifully. Thought about my family's criticism, their suggestions that the girls needed more than I could provide, their constant implications that our family was somehow deficient. Mrs. Patterson, I said carefully, some people have suggested that the girls might benefit from different arrangements, more traditional family structures. Her expression grew serious. Mr. Thompson, family structure has very little to do with children's well-being. What matters is consistency, love, presence, and emotional security. Your daughters have all of that in abundance. She pulled out one final sheet of paper. I've documented some specific examples of their emotional intelligence and social skills. Emma helped resolve a conflict between two classmates last week by suggesting they each share their perspective and find common ground. Sophie comforted a crying child by sitting quietly with her until she felt ready to talk. These are 7-year-olds displaying emotional maturity that many adults lack, she continued. They learned these skills at home, from watching how their father treats them and others. As our conference ended, Mrs. Patterson handed me copies of her notes. I want you to have these, she said, not just for your records, but because I think you need to see what I see. Your daughters are thriving because of your parenting, not despite it. Walking to my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time since Sarah left, I had professional validation that I wasn't just surviving as a parent, I was excelling at it. Emma and Sophie were waiting at home with Mrs. Rodriguez, eager to hear about their conference. When I told them what Mrs. Patterson had said, they beamed with pride, not just about their achievements, but about the fact that their teacher recognized what they'd always known. They had the best daddy in the world. The school incident reports were tucked discreetly in a manila folder that Mrs. Patterson hesitated to share. I probably shouldn't show you these, she said, but given what you've told me about your family's concerns about your daughters, I think you need to understand the full picture. Inside the folder were documentation sheets I'd never seen before, behavioral incident reports, parent conference notes, and counselor referrals spanning the past 2 years. The names at the top of each form made my stomach drop. Tyler Thompson and Madison Thompson, David's children. These are my nephew and niece, I asked, hardly believing what I was seeing. Mrs. Patterson nodded gravely. I taught Tyler 2 years ago, and I've had several conferences with your brother and sister-in-law about both children. I'm breaking protocol by sharing this, but I feel you need to know. The first report was about Tyler, physical aggression toward smaller students during recess. When confronted, Tyler stated that weak kids deserve what they get. Parent conference recommended. The second, Madison exhibited severe anxiety during math test, resulting in panic attack and school nurse visit. Student refuses to participate in activities where she might make mistakes. Counseling services recommended. There were dozens more. Tyler, bullying younger children, lying to teachers, stealing lunches from classmates, Madison having meltdowns, When she received anything less than perfect grades, refusing to speak in class, isolating herself during social activities. I don't understand, I said, scanning the dates. These incidents go back years. Why haven't I heard about any of this? Your brother has been very strategic about managing these situations, Mrs. Patterson said carefully. He's used his legal background to challenge every report, threaten the school with legal action if incidents are documented in permanent records, and demand that we handle everything internally. She pulled out another folder. David Thompson has filed formal complaints against 3 different teachers, claiming bias against his children. He's demanded that Madison be moved to different classrooms. Twice because he felt the teachers were too demanding. He's insisted that Tyler's behavioral issues are due to the school's inability to properly challenge gifted students. My mind was reeling, but they seem so well behaved at family gatherings. Children can be very different in different environments, Mrs. Patterson explained. Tyler and Madison are under enormous pressure at home to appear perfect. They've learned to control their behavior during short social situations, but the stress manifests in other ways. She showed me notes from counseling sessions. Madison had told the school counselor that she was scared of disappointing Daddy and worried that if I'm not the best, Daddy won't love me anymore. Tyler had expressed anger about feeling different from other kids because his parents expected him to be better than everyone else. Mrs. Patterson, I said slowly. My family has been telling me for 3 years that my daughters need more structure, more guidance, that our family situation is damaging them. Meanwhile, David's children are struggling with serious behavioral and emotional issues. Your daughters have never had a single behavioral incident report, she confirmed. No counseling referrals, no parent conferences about problems. The only conferences I've requested with you have been to share positive feedback about their progress. The irony was staggering. While my family criticized my parenting and suggested my daughters were suffering from our non-traditional family structure, the children from the perfect traditional family were struggling with aggression, anxiety, and emotional instability. There's something else you should know, Mrs. Patterson said hesitantly. Your sister Jennifer called the school last month asking about Emma and Sophie's academic and social development. She specifically asked whether we had concerns about their adjustment to their family situation. What did you tell her? I told her that information about your daughters could only be shared with you, their parent. But her questions suggested she was expecting us to report problems that simply don't exist. Mrs. Patterson pulled out one more documented comparison chart she'd apparently created for our conference. I've been teaching long enough to recognize patterns. Children from stable, loving homes, regardless of family structure, show consistent characteristics: emotional regulation, empathy, academic engagement, social competence. Your daughters excel in all these areas. She pointed to another column. Children from high-pressure, performance-focused homes often struggle with anxiety, perfectionism, social difficulties, and behavioral problems. They may appear successful on the surface, but they're not emotionally healthy. David and Michelle's children fall into the second category, I asked. Unfortunately, yes. The pressure to maintain their family's perfect image has created significant stress for both children. Tyler acts out because he can't express his feelings at home. Madison has developed anxiety because she's afraid of not meeting impossible standards. I thought about all the family gatherings where David's children had seemed so well behaved, so perfect compared to my sometimes chaotic daughters. I thought about my mother's constant praise for their accomplishments and her disappointment in Emma and Sophie's more relaxed approach to life. Does David know about these problems? I asked. We've tried to work with both parents multiple times. They tend to blame external factors: the school, other children, individual teachers. They've never acknowledged that the children might be responding to pressure or stress at home. Mrs. Patterson closed the folders and looked at me directly. Mr. Thompson, I want to be very clear about something. In all my years of teaching, I have never seen a starker contrast between perception and reality. Your family sees problems that don't exist while remaining blind to problems that do exist. Why are you sharing this with me? I asked. Because you've been questioning your own parenting based on criticism from people who have serious blind spots about their own children. You need to understand that their judgment is not reliable. She handed me a summary sheet she'd prepared. Your daughters are emotionally healthy, academically successful, socially competent, and genuinely happy children. They're a credit to your parenting, not a concern. Driving home, I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. Vindication that my parenting instincts had been right, that Emma and Sophie were thriving despite my family's criticism. Sadness that my nephew and niece were struggling while everyone pretended their family was perfect, but mostly, I felt anger. Anger that my family had spent 3 years undermining my confidence as a parent while ignoring serious problems in their own children. Anger that they'd made Emma and Sophie feel like their family was inadequate while covering up the dysfunction in the supposedly superior alternative that evening. I called David. We need to talk, I said when he answered the phone. Marcus, if this is about Mom's birthday party, it's about your children, I interrupted, and mine, and the truth about which family is actually struggling. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. The perfect family image was about to crumble, and it was time for my family to face some uncomfortable realities about their judgment and their own lives. The text message thread in our family group chat exploded the moment I sent my message. Family meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. We need to discuss some things about the children, all of them. This conversation is long overdue. David, what's this about? Jennifer, Marcus. If you're still upset about the birthday party, Mom, can't we just move past this? The girls miss their family. Me. This isn't about the birthday party. This is about truth. About which children are actually struggling and which ones are thriving. David, what are you implying? Me. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Facts I learned from Mrs. Patterson about all the Thompson grandchildren. The typing indicators appeared and disappeared several times as family members started to respond, then deleted their messages. Finally, David called me directly. Marcus, what exactly did Mrs. Patterson tell you? The truth, I said calmly. About Emma and Sophie's exceptional academic and social development, and about Tyler and Madison's behavioral issues, anxiety problems, and the multiple incident reports you've been covering up for 2 years. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Those reports are confidential, David finally said, his lawyer voice kicking in. She had no right to share them with you. She shared them because you and the rest of our family have spent 3 years telling me my daughters are suffering while hiding the fact that your children are actually the ones who need help. You don't understand the situation. I understand. Perfectly. Tyler bullies younger children because he's learned that being stronger makes him superior. Madison has panic attacks because she's terrified of disappointing parents who value performance over well-being. Meanwhile, you've all been suggesting that Emma and Sophie are the ones who need rescuing. David's composure cracked. Don't you dare judge my parenting. You have no idea what it's like trying to raise successful children in a competitive world. I know what it's like to raise happy children in a challenging world. Apparently that's harder than I thought. The family meeting. The next day was unlike any gathering we'd ever had. I arrived with a folder containing Mrs. Patterson's notes, her comparison charts, and documentation of Emma and Sophie's achievements. My family arrived looking defensive and uncomfortable. Before anyone says anything, I began, I want to share some information about your grandchildren, all of them. I spread out the academic reports, behavioral assessments, and teacher comments on the coffee table. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Emma is reading 2 grade levels above her peers and has been recommended for the gifted program, I said, reading from Mrs. Patterson's notes. Sophie's creative writing has been selected for the district showcase. Both girls have been praised repeatedly for their emotional maturity, empathy, and leadership among their classmates. My mother picked up one of the reports, scanning the glowing teacher comments with growing surprise. In contrast, I continued, pulling out the incident reports. Tyler has been written up 16 times for aggressive behavior toward other students. Madison has required counseling intervention for anxiety-related issues that are interfering with her ability to function in school. Jennifer's face went pale. How did you get those? Mrs. Patterson felt I needed to understand the reality of the situation after 3 years of being told my parenting was inadequate while yours was exemplary. David stood up, his face flushed with anger. You had no right to go digging into my children's private school records. I didn't go digging. Your children's teacher shared information with me because she was concerned about the pressure your family has been putting on me to change my parenting approach when my children are clearly thriving. This is completely inappropriate. Jennifer added, even if there are some challenges with Tyler and Madison, that doesn't mean your situation is ideal. You're right, I said, my voice staying calm despite my rising anger. My situation isn't ideal. It's better than ideal. My daughters are happy, healthy, confident, and kind. They're excelling academically and socially. They have strong emotional intelligence and resilience. What more could any parent want? My mother looked up from the reports with tears in her eyes. I had no idea Emma and Sophie were doing so well in school. You never asked, I replied gently. You assumed they were struggling because we don't fit your image of what a family should look like. You were so focused on what we were missing that you never saw what we had. David sat back down, his defiance deflating. The incidents with Tyler. We've been working on those. He's just going through a 2-year phase of bullying other children. I asked, David, your son told a teacher that weak kids deserve what they get. Where do you think he learned that attitude? The question hung in the air, unanswered but understood. Jennifer picked up Madison's counseling referral. She's just a perfectionist. She wants to do well. She's a 7-year-old who has panic attacks when she gets anything less than 100% on assignments. I said, that's not healthy ambition. That's anxiety disorder caused by impossible expectations. We just want the best for our children, Jennifer said defensively. So do I. The difference is that I define best as happy, healthy, and secure. You define it as perfect performance and social status. My mother set down the papers and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between shame and admiration. Marcus, she said quietly, I owe you an apology. We all do. I don't need apologies. I replied, I need acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that Emma, Sophie, and I are a successful family exactly as we are. Acknowledgement that my parenting doesn't need to be fixed or supplemented or supervised. But what about the girls' future? Jennifer asked weakly. College, opportunities. What about their present? I interrupted. They're 7 years old. They have time to worry about college later. Right now, they need to feel secure, loved, and valued for who they are, not what they achieve. David cleared his throat. I think maybe Michelle and I need to reconsider some of our approaches with Tyler and Madison. That's between you and your family, I said. But I won't have Emma and Sophie subjected to criticism or suggestions that they need to be more like children who are actually struggling. The family group chat that night was notably different. Mom, Marcus, I've been thinking about our conversation. You're right. I've been so worried about what the girls were missing that I never saw what they had. Jennifer, I'm sorry for suggesting you weren't capable. The teacher reports speak for themselves. David, Michelle and I are looking into counseling. For Tyler and Madison, we want to do better. Me, I appreciate that. When you're ready to accept our family as complete and successful, we'll be here. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like the family dynamics were shifting in our favor. Not because I'd proven them wrong, but because the truth had finally come to light. Emma and Sophie deserved family members who celebrated their success rather than constantly looking for problems to fix. And maybe, eventually we could have that kind of family relationship, but it would be on our terms, with respect for who we were and what we'd accomplished together. The family therapy appointment card fell out of David's wallet when he was paying for lunch 3 weeks after our confrontation. It was an accident. He was reaching for his credit card, and the small appointment reminder fluttered to the floor. Between us, Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I read as I handed it back to him. Family counseling with Dr. Sarah Chen. David's face reddened as he tucked the card away. Michelle thought it might be helpful for Tyler and Madison's adjustment issues. We were having our first one-on-one conversation since the family meeting, an awkward lunch that he'd suggested, as an olive branch. The restaurant was neutral territory, somewhere we could talk without the rest of the family's interference. How are they doing? I asked, genuinely concerned about my nephew and niece, despite everything. It's been hard, David admitted, his professional composure cracking slightly. The counselor says Tyler's aggression is his way of expressing feelings. He can't verbalize at home. Apparently, we've created an environment where showing vulnerability is seen as weakness. He paused, stirring his coffee with unnecessary focus. Madison told Dr. Chen that she's afraid we'll stop loving her if she's not perfect. She's 7 years old, Marcus Devlin, and she's carrying that kind of fear. The pain in his voice was real. Whatever else, David was competitive, judgmental. Driven by appearances, he loved his children and was confronting the reality that his approach to parenting was harming them. Michelle's been crying every night since our first session, he continued. The counselor explained how performance-based love affects children's development, their ability to form healthy relationships. We thought we were preparing them for success, but we were actually setting them up for anxiety and emotional problems. What's the counselor recommending? I asked. Complete restructuring of how we interact with them. No more praise-focused on achievement. No more comparisons to other children. No more conditional approval based on grades or behavior. He looked up at me. She said we need to learn how to love them for who they are, not what they accomplish. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. David was having to pay a professional to teach him what I'd been doing naturally with Emma and Sophie for 3 years. She also said something that hit me hard, David continued. She asked us to describe our children's personalities, their interests, their fears, their dreams. Marcus, I couldn't answer most of her questions. I know Tyler's grades, his test scores, his athletic achievements, but I don't know his favorite color, or what makes him laugh, or what he worries about when he can't sleep. This was the most honest conversation David and I had ever had. For once, he wasn't competing or positioning himself as superior. He was just a father struggling to understand how he'd lost connection with his children while trying to prepare them for success. Michelle wants to quit her volunteer work, cut back on Tyler's activities, stop pushing Madison so hard academically. The counselor says the children need downtime, unstructured play, and parents who are present emotionally, not just physically. That sounds like good advice, I said carefully. You know what the hardest part is? David asked, realizing that, while I was judging your parenting, you were actually doing everything right. Your daughters know you love them unconditionally. They're confident because they feel valued for who they are. They're kind because they've experienced kindness. They're resilient because they've learned that making mistakes doesn't diminish their worth. He pulled out his phone and showed me a text from Michelle. Tyler smiled today, really smiled when I told him I was proud of him for helping his sister with her shoes. Not because he achieved something, just because he was kind. When was the last time we celebrated kindness instead of achievement? Jennifer's struggling too, David added. Her session with Kevin's teacher didn't go well. Apparently he's been lying about homework completion and hiding assignments. He's failed. The teacher suggested that Kevin feels so much pressure to be perfect that he'd rather lie than disappoint his mother. Jennifer had been the most vocal critic of my parenting, constantly quoting her parenting books and suggesting improvements. Learning that her own son was developing deceptive behaviors to cope with her expectations must have been devastating. What's hardest for all of us, David continued, is that we've spent 3 years criticizing you for not providing enough structure, enough opportunities, enough traditional family stability. Meanwhile, your daughters were thriving while our children were developing serious, emotional, and behavioral problems. The waiter refilled our coffee cups, and David stared into his for a long moment before speaking again. Mom called me yesterday. She said she's been watching old videos of family gatherings, and she noticed something she'd never seen before. In every video, Emma and Sophie are relaxed, happy, engaged with you. They lean against you during conversations, they seek you out. When they're tired or excited, they share their thoughts and feelings freely. They're comfortable with me, I said. They know they're safe. Tyler and Madison aren't like that with Michelle and me. They perform for us. They tell us what they think we want to hear. They show us their achievements but hide their struggles. We've trained them to be our products instead of our children. David reached across the table and handed me an envelope. Michelle and I wrote you a letter. We wanted to apologize. But more than that, we wanted to acknowledge something officially. Inside was a handwritten note on Michelle's personal stationery. Marcus, we owe you more than an apology. We owe you recognition. You are an exceptional father, raising exceptional daughters. Your family is not missing anything. It's complete, successful, and beautiful exactly as it is. We're sorry for questioning your parenting when we should have been learning from it. Emma and Sophie are lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have them as family members. We hope someday we can build the kind of loving, secure relationships with our children that you've created with yours. The counselor asked us to write that, David explained. She said we needed to acknowledge the damage our criticism caused, not just to you, but to Emma and Sophie. She said children internalize adults' judgments about their families, and we may have made your daughters feel like their family was inadequate. They're strong kids, I said. They know they're loved. They shouldn't have had to be strong against their own family members, David replied. That's on us. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, David asked quietly, do you think we can rebuild our relationship? As brothers? As families? I hope so, I said honestly. But it has to be based on respect. Respect for my parenting choices. Respect for our family structure. Respect for Emma and Sophie's right to feel proud of who they are. Done, David said immediately. No more suggestions, no more criticism, no more comparisons. I want to learn from you, not judge you. Walking to our cars, I felt something I hadn't experienced with my family in years. Hope? Not hope that they would finally approve of me, but hope that we could build relationships based on truth instead of expectations. Love instead of performance, acceptance instead of judgment. The consequences of their years of criticism were 2 relationships, missed opportunities for connection, time lost that we couldn't recover, but accountability was the first step toward healing. And for the first time, my family was ready to be held accountable. The letter to my family took me 3 days to write. I wanted every word to be carefully chosen, every boundary clearly established, every expectation explicitly stated. This wasn't about anger or punishment, it was about creating a framework for healthy relationships moving forward. Dear family, I began, sitting at my kitchen table while Emma and Sophie did their homework nearby. I'm writing to establish some guidelines for our relationships going forward. These boundaries aren't meant to punish anyone, but to protect my daughter's emotional well-being and ensure that our family interactions are positive and supportive. The girls looked up occasionally as I worked, sensing the importance of what I was doing without understanding the details. Sophie brought me a glass of water. Emma quietly placed a drawing of our family on the table beside my laptop, 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, with best family ever written in her careful handwriting. Their simple gestures reminded me why this letter was necessary. Emma and Sophie deserved family relationships that celebrated their worth rather than questioning it. First, I need everyone to understand that Emma, Sophie, and I are a complete family. We are not broken, missing pieces, or in need of fixing. Any suggestions that imply otherwise are not welcome and will result in limited contact. I paused, remembering all the times family members had implied that the girls needed more than I could provide, that our family structure was somehow inadequate. Second, my parenting decisions are not open for debate or improvement suggestions. Emma and Sophie are thriving academically, socially, and emotionally. Unless I specifically ask for advice, please trust that I know what's best for my children. This was perhaps the most important boundary. For 3 years, my family had treated my parenting like a group project, with everyone entitled to opinions and suggestions. That dynamic had to end. Third, Emma and Sophie should never be made to feel that their family is inferior to others or that they're missing essential elements of childhood. They are happy, secure children who deserve to feel proud of their family structure. I thought about Emma's anxiety journal, about the questions other children asked that made her feel different, about the need to protect her from adult judgments that could undermine her confidence. Fourth, financial discussions about our family are off limits. Yes, we live on a budget. Yes, we make different choices than families with more resources. These choices reflect our values and priorities, not inadequacies that need to be corrected. The constant implications that we needed financial rescue, that my daughters were being deprived, had to stop. We were choosing experiences over things, relationships over status, and that was a valid approach to family life. Fifth, comparisons between Emma and Sophie and other children in the family must end immediately. Each child is unique, with their own strengths, challenges, and developmental timeline. Creating competition or hierarchies among cousins is harmful to all the children involved. I remembered my mother's constant praise for David's children's achievements while treating Emma and Sophie's accomplishments as consolation prizes. That dynamic was toxic for everyone. Finally, I need everyone to understand that these boundaries are non-negotiable. If they're not respected, I will limit or end contact to protect my daughter's emotional health. This isn't a promise that I will always prioritize their well-being over family harmony. After I finished the letter, I shared it with Emma and Sophie in age-appropriate terms. Daddy wrote a letter to our family, I explained. It tells them how to treat us with respect and kindness. Like rules for being nice, Sophie asked. Exactly like that. Rules that help everyone remember that our family is special and important, just the way we are. Emma looked thoughtful. Does this mean they won't say mean things about us anymore? The question broke my heart. At 7 years old, Emma had internalized the family criticism enough to describe it as mean things. I should have established these boundaries years ago. If they say mean things, we won't spend time with them, I said firmly. Our family only wants to be around people who love us and think we're wonderful. We are wonderful, Sophie declared with 7-year-old certainty. Yes, we are, I agreed. I sent the letter via email to all family members, then printed copies for my records. The responses came within hours. Mom, I understand and accept your boundaries. I want to be part of your lives in whatever way works for you. David, these are fair requests. Michelle and I are committed to following them. Jennifer's response took longer. I'm still processing everything, but I respect your right to protect your daughters. I hope we can rebuild our relationship within these guidelines. The real test came at my mother's next birthday celebration a month later. For the first time in years, I attended a family gathering feeling confident rather than defensive. Emma and Sophie were excited to see their cousins, and I was cautiously optimistic about the new dynamic. The difference was immediately apparent. Instead of criticism disguised as concern, I received genuine compliments. Emma, your drawing is beautiful, my mother said, admiring Sophie's latest artwork. You're so creative. Sophie, tell me about your favorite book, David asked, sitting at her eye level and giving her his full attention. When Emma mentioned that she was reading chapter books, Jennifer's response was simply, that's wonderful. You must really love reading. No comparisons to grade levels, no suggestions for improvement, no implications that she should be doing more. The most significant moment came when Tyler had a meltdown over losing a board game. Instead of the usual family scrambling to manage his behavior or make excuses, David calmly removed him from the situation. It's okay to feel frustrated, I heard him tell Tyler quietly, but we need to use words instead of throwing things. Let's take some deep breaths together. Meanwhile, Emma and Sophie continued playing with Madison, who seemed more relaxed than I'd ever seen her when she made a mistake during the game. Instead of the usual anxiety, she simply said, oops, and continued playing. Michelle and I have been working on letting the kids just be kids, David explained later. The counselor was right. They needed permission to be imperfect. As the evening wound down, my mother pulled me aside. Marcus, I owe you more than an apology, she said. I owe you recognition. Watching you with Emma and Sophie tonight, seeing how secure and happy they are, I realize what an extraordinary father you are. Thank you, I said simply. I've been thinking about why I was so critical, she continued. I think I was afraid that if your non-traditional family succeeded, it meant I'd been wrong about what children need. Instead of celebrating your success, I tried to find problems that confirmed my biases. Her honesty was unexpected and appreciated. What matters now is moving forward, I said. I want to be a better grandmother to Emma and Sophie, she said. Not someone who makes them feel like they need to prove their worth, but someone who celebrates who they already are. On the drive home, Emma asked, Daddy, did you notice that nobody said anything mean about our family tonight? I did notice that, I replied. How did it feel? It felt normal, Sophie said. Like we belonged there. You've always belonged there, I said. Now everyone else knows it too. The new boundaries had worked exactly as intended. By clearly communicating my expectations and demonstrating that I was willing to enforce them, I'd created space for authentic, respectful relationships to develop. But the most important change wasn't in my family's behavior, was in my own confidence. I no longer felt the need to justify our choices or prove our worth. I knew Emma and Sophie were thriving, and I trusted my parenting decisions completely. Over the following weeks we began building new traditions with family members who respected our boundaries. My mother started coming to Emma and Sophie's school events, not to evaluate our family but to celebrate their achievements. David and I began having regular conversations about parenting challenges, with him asking for advice rather than offering criticism. Jennifer's adjustment took longer, but she gradually learned to interact with my daughters without trying to fix or improve. Then, she began to see Emma's sensitivity as a strength rather than a problem. Sophie's creativity as a gift rather than a distraction. The letter I'd written established more than boundaries. It established my authority as Emma and Sophie's father and our family's right to exist exactly as we were. For the first time since Sarah left, I felt truly supported by my extended family, rather than constantly judged by them. Emma and Sophie noticed the change immediately. They stopped being anxious before family gatherings. They began sharing stories and achievements with grandparents and aunts and uncles who finally knew how to celebrate rather than critique. "Daddy," Emma said one evening as I tucked her into bed, "I like our family better now." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Before it felt like we had to be different for other people. Now it feels like other people understand that we're perfect the way we are." Her 7-year-old wisdom captured exactly what had changed. We were still the same family of 3, still facing the same challenges, and celebrating the same joys. But now we had the support system we'd always deserved. Family members who saw our strengths instead of our deficits, who celebrated our successes instead of searching for problems. The boundaries I'd established weren't walls, they were foundations. Foundations for relationships built on respect, acceptance, and genuine love rather than judgment and conditional approval. And for the first time in 3 years, our family gatherings felt like celebrations rather than evaluations. The thank you letter from Mrs. Patterson arrived on a Saturday morning, 6 months after that life-changing parent-teacher conference. Emma brought it to me with the rest of the mail, recognizing her teacher's handwriting on the envelope. "Dear Mr. Thompson," it began, "I wanted to update you on Emma and Sophie's continued progress, and to thank you for allowing me to share your family's story with other educators." I settled into my coffee with curiosity. Mrs. Patterson had become more than just the girls' teacher. She'd become an advocate for our family and a source of ongoing encouragement. Emma has been selected as a peer mediator for the school's conflict resolution program. Her ability to help other children work through disagreements while maintaining empathy for all sides is remarkable. She told me yesterday that she learned this skill by watching how her daddy handles problems. With kindness and fairness, I smiled, remembering a conversation Emma and I had about handling a disagreement with a friend. She'd absorbed not just the advice, but the approach. Sophie has been invited to participate in the district's Young Writers Workshop based on her creative storytelling abilities. Her latest piece, about a family of explorers who discover that love is the greatest treasure, moved several adult readers to tears. Her imagination is matched only by her emotional insight. The girls burst through the front door at that moment. Back from playing at the park with Mrs. Rodriguez, they were sun-flushed and happy, chattering about their adventures on the swings and monkey bars. "Daddy, guess what?" Sophie announced. Emma helped 2 kids stop fighting over the basketball. Sophie painted a picture with sidewalk chalk that looked like our house. Emma added, "Mrs. Rodriguez said it was museum quality." These were my daughters' confident, creative, kind children who moved through the world with security and joy. The contrast to the anxious, struggling children my family had once imagined them to be was stark. I continued reading Mrs. Patterson's letter. "I've shared your family's story with your permission, of course at several education conferences. Your daughters serve as a powerful example that family structure matters far less than family love. They demonstrate that children can thrive in any environment where they feel valued, supported, and emotionally secure." The letter went on to describe how our story had influenced other educators' perspectives on single-parent families, how it challenged assumptions about what children need to succeed, how it highlighted the importance of focusing on children's emotional well-being rather than their family's appearance. "What I find most remarkable," Mrs. Patterson continued, "is not just how well Emma and Sophie are doing, but how they've maintained their emotional health despite the challenges they've faced. They've learned resilience without becoming hardened, independence without becoming detached, and strength without losing their gentleness." 6 months ago, I'd been questioning every parenting decision I made, wondering if my family was enough, doubting my ability to provide everything my daughters needed. Now, I felt the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The transformation wasn't just in how others saw us, it was in how we saw ourselves. Emma's anxiety had virtually disappeared once we established boundaries with family members who'd made her feel like our family was inadequate. Sophie's defensiveness had melted away when she no longer felt the need to protect us from constant criticism. But perhaps the most significant change was in me. I no longer sought validation from people who were predisposed to find fault. I trusted my instincts, celebrated our successes, and addressed our challenges without shame or defensiveness. "Daddy," Emma said, climbing into my lap as I finished. "The letter, Mrs. Patterson told us, she wrote to you. What did she say?" "She said you two are exceptional students and even more exceptional people," I replied. "She's proud to be your teacher." "We're proud to have you as our daddy," Sophie said, settling beside us on the couch. These moments, these simple, perfect moments of connection were what I'd been fighting to protect all along. Not the structure of our family, but the spirit of it. Not the things we could provide, but the love we shared. The letter concluded with a paragraph that I would frame and keep forever. Mr. Thompson, you have raised daughters who will change the world through their kindness, their emotional intelligence, and their unwavering belief in the power of love. They are living proof that the best gift a parent can give a child is not perfect circumstances, but perfect acceptance. Thank you for allowing me to witness their growth and for trusting me with their education. Later that evening, as I watched Emma help Sophie with a puzzle while they waited for dinner, I reflected on how far we'd come. 3 years ago, I had been a confused, overwhelmed single father, wondering if I was enough for 2 little girls who'd lost their mother. Tonight, I was confident in my role as the father of 2 remarkable young women who were thriving under my care. The girls had grown into themselves beautifully. Emma's sensitivity had become emotional intelligence. Sophie's stubbornness had become determination. Their bond with each other had deepened, but it no longer felt like they were protecting each other from the world. Now they were exploring the world together, confident in the safety net of our family's love. What are you thinking about, Daddy? Sophie asked, noticing my contemplative mood. I'm thinking about how lucky I am, I said honestly. How grateful I am to be your father. We're lucky too, Emma said. We got the best daddy in the world. And we're a team, Sophie added. The 3 of us together. As I tucked them into bed that night, I realized that the validation I'd been seeking from my extended family had been right here all along. Emma and Sophie had never doubted that our family was complete, successful, and filled with love. They'd never questioned my ability to provide what they needed most. The teacher who told me I was the best parent she'd ever met had simply confirmed what my daughters had known all along. Sometimes the most important recognition comes not from the people whose approval we seek, but from the people whose lives we've touched most deeply. Our story wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about building something beautiful. Together, a family based on love, respect, and unwavering commitment to each other's happiness. We'd faced criticism, overcome challenges, and emerged stronger than ever. Looking at Emma and Sophie sleeping peacefully in their beds, I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you've given your children the most important gift any parent can provide, the absolute certainty that they are loved, valued, and cherished exactly as they are. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new challenges, and new opportunities to grow together. But tonight, I was content in the knowledge that we were exactly where we needed to be, 3 people who'd chosen each other, supported each other, and created something beautiful together. We were family, in the truest and most important sense of the word.